So there are a lot of people who are searching for truth and meaning today. And if that's you, I think you need philosophy in your life. Now, I don't think you need to become a big nerd or anything or get an advanced degree, but I do think you need to question your assumptions. We look at 3 reasons why you need philosophy in your life. Hey, if you like this content, be sure to subscribe. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here we go. So philosophy really is just asking the big and ultimate questions of life. And if you're going to get that stuff figured out, if you're going to figure out meaning and if you're going to figure out purpose, then you're going to have to ask the big philosophical questions. So here are 3 reasons to have philosophy in your life. First is that philosophy helps you to examine your assumptions. Now, the reality is that we all have philosophical assumptions, right? We just kind of pick those up from the world around us, from our parents, from our school experience, right? Whatever it may be, friends, the music we listen to, the movies that we watch. We pick up these philosophical assumptions. The question really is not, do you have philosophical assumptions? You do. The question is, will you question them? Will you examine them? And will you hold them in a way that's intentional rather than merely accidental? Socrates famously said that the unexamined life is not worth living. And while that might be a little extreme, his point is just to say that it's a great good to live the examined life. Right? There's all kinds of benefits to us questioning our assumptions and examining the things that we value and that we believe. I mean, why would you want to live life in an uncritical way? Why would you want to just borrow the beliefs and the assumptions of others? A philosophical assumption that a lot of people make is what we might call hedonism. This idea of pleasure being an intrinsic good, and that's something that we should seek in life, right? We should be a pleasure seeker. Many people have this idea that it's just a great good to seek after pleasure. But I think that should be questioned. I think that's a philosophical assumption that ought to be questioned and examined, right? Because it seems to me and many other philosophers that hedonism actually leads us to a lot of misery. This is sometimes called the paradox of hedonism. So the idea is that when you seek pleasure as an end in itself, as the goal, it actually makes you way more miserable, right? Just think of that person who's all about the party when they're young, and every weekend it's the party the whole time. Right? They are typically the most miserable people on the planet. Pleasure seeking in this way is self-defeating. It doesn't, if we make it kind of an end in itself, right? It's very self-seeking, self-interested. And again, when we do that, we tend to be left really empty. But if we don't ever question that assumption, right? If we don't ever think philosophically about that commitment that arguably a lot of us have, we'll find ourselves miserable. And so, of course, it's much better to reflect on this and to think philosophically about it and evaluate it and live that examined life. The second reason is that philosophy leads to wisdom. Wisdom is often seen as a skill. It's a skill for how to live well or live virtuously or to flourish in life. So, right, philosophy helps us sort of examine our commitments and our assumptions and figure out what is good. And then wisdom is that knowledge of how to get to the good. Now, it's not to say that you'll get it all figured out in doing philosophy. In fact, part of wisdom, if you ask Socrates, is realizing how little we know. And his point there is to say that, look, the world is really complicated, and figuring these things out is really difficult. He's much more worried about someone who thinks that they've got it all figured out, but they're pointed in the wrong direction. And so wisdom is found in realizing that we don't have it all figured out, and sort of moving cautiously through the world as we aim at things that are indeed good. This has lots to do with just living a reflective life, questioning our assumptions again and evaluating our assumptions, but also just thinking about what is life all about. What are the goods? What should we be aimed at? And really kind of course correcting when we see that we're not aimed at things that are good. And that really is wisdom. Okay, and third, and perhaps most controversially, I'm going to say that you need philosophy in your life because philosophy leads to God. I'm not saying every person who studies philosophy will, necessarily believe in God. I do think that what we do in doing philosophy sort of puts us in the way, puts us on the journey towards God. And this really comes out of my own study and reflection in the desire and the pursuit of an ultimate explanation. The idea is that in giving philosophical explanations, at some point, you need to land on some sort of ultimate explanation. Right? You can't just kind of have this endless regress of explanations. It's got to cut off somewhere. Whatever will be the ultimate explanation, there has to be some reason why it's ultimate, why there's not some further layer of explanation that's needed. And I'm really convinced that the only thing that fits the bill is God. God is the only thing for which there's not some further explanation that's needed or even would help the situation, would even add to the picture. If somebody just said, well, look, I can explain reality by reference to the universe. There's just the universe. But think about how hollow that really is, how thin of an explanation that is. And because it just begs the next layer of explanation to say, well, why is there a universe? The universe didn't always exist. The universe is this contingent thing. But when we think of God as explanation, God didn't have a beginning. God didn't have a creator. God didn't have a cause. God is a necessary being that arguably explains all the rest of being. So I actually think that philosophy genuinely leads us to God because for every philosophical question, as you sort of trace it out, as you keep pursuing it, as you keep asking for that further layer of explanation, I think at some point you run into the reality of God as the explanation for all things. Now, feel free to challenge this. Right? You might not think this is right. You might think that there's some other way to give an ultimate explanation. I'd be all ears for that, right? And I'm going to be happy because you're going to be reflecting and thinking and doing philosophy, and I think you're going to be better for it.